They say some parts of the Appalachian Mountains were never meant to be touched by human feet. Places so steeped in silence, so heavy with dread, that even the animals avoid them. One of those places is Caldwell Hollow, a valley, so isolated it doesn't appear on most maps. And if you ask the locals, they'll tell you the same chilling thing. The Caldwell family still lives there. The Caldwells weren't like the other mountain clans, where most families kept to themselves to survive. The Caldwells kept to themselves to hide. The earliest whispers date back to the mid-1800s, when farmers spoke of children vanishing from nearby settlements, cattle mutilated, travelers disappearing along dirt roads, and always, at the edges of these stories, strange shapes seen on ridgelines, too tall, too thin, moving too fast to be human. But the most terrifying truth wasn't just that the Caldwells were killers. It was how they lived. According to one of the oldest accounts, a preacher sent to deliver supplies stumbled upon the family by accident. He described their cabin as a collapsing structure built from timber blackened by fire. Skulls lined the roof beams like ornaments. Inside, the air reeked of rot and smoke, and in the corner, he claimed he saw a pile of bones, human bones, gnawed and cracked. Children with twisted faces and too wide smiles peered at him from the shadows, their eyes glinting in the firelight. He left that night and never returned, warning the townsfolk. The Caldwells don't bury their dead, they eat them. From that moment on, Caldwell Hollow became a place cursed by name alone. Parents used the family as a warning to keep their children from wandering too far into the woods. But whispers continued, of hunters stumbling on strange pits filled with bones, of screams echoing in the night, and of crude traps set along deer trails not to catch animals. But people thought the inbreeding only deepened the family's grotesque reputation. Those who claimed to have seen them described features that didn't look entirely human. Sloping foreheads, eyes set too close together, limbs bent at unnatural angles. And yet, they moved with terrifying speed and cunning, able to vanish into the woods like smoke. One of the most infamous incidents happened in 1924, when a prospector named Elijah Ward vanished while searching for coal veins in the mountains. His mule was found days later, its throat torn open, its insides picked clean. The man's camp was discovered nearby, bedroll shredded, belongings scattered, and a trail of drag marks leading into the hollow. Search parties followed the tracks, but stopped when they found a crude necklace strung with finger bones hanging from a tree branch. They turned back, refusing to take another step. Elijah Ward was never found. But the Caldwells weren't just savage, they were cunning. Stories spread of them luring outsiders with cries for help, mimicking voices in the woods, even setting fires to draw rescuers into traps. And each time someone vanished, the families nearby would whisper the same warning: the Caldwells are feeding again. By the 1950s, locals claimed the hollow itself had become tainted. Trees grew twisted, their bark carved with spirals and symbols. Animals born near the valley came out deformed two-headed snakes, calves with twisted legs. People said the land had absorbed too much blood, too much horror, and at the heart of it all, the Caldwell family thrived. Hidden from the world but always watching, always waiting. Even today, hikers tell of strange encounters, low laughter drifting through the trees, sudden silence where no bird sings, shapes flitting across the trail just out of sight. And when night falls, some swear they've seen fires burning deep in the valley, surrounded by figures too distorted to be called human. And here's the most disturbing part. According to a handful of researchers, there are signs that the Caldwells never died out, that their descendants still live in the hollow, waiting for those unlucky enough to wander too close. The Caldwells were more than just a family, they were a curse, and their hunger has echoed through the mountains for nearly 2 centuries. By the 1960s, the Caldwell name had become less of a memory and more of a warning etched into the culture of the mountains. The hollow where they lived was avoided entirely, Hunters drew maps with circles around it. Hikers rerouted their trails. But fear alone wasn't enough to erase them. The Caldwells had a way of making themselves known, usually in blood. One of the most haunting stories comes from a pair of teenagers in 1967 who dared each other to camp on the edge of Caldwell Hollow. They pitched their tent just before dusk, laughing off the warnings they'd grown up hearing. By midnight, their laughter had turned to silence. They claimed they heard someone circling their tent, soft, deliberate footsteps crunching through the leaves. Then, a whisper. Not one voice, but several layered, overlapping, like a family all speaking at once, imitating words they didn't fully understand. When the boys unzipped their tent to look, they saw nothing, just fog drifting between the trees. But when they turned back, their supplies were gone. Every scrap of food, every bit of water, stripped away in seconds. They fled the hollow before dawn, swearing that pale hands had reached out of the dark, tugging at their clothes as they ran. Stories like these bled into the 1970s, when hunters began finding strange totems deep in the forest, bundles of sticks, tied together with sinew, crowned with skulls from deer and raccoons. At first glance, they looked like crude decorations, but when some were taken down and examined, disturbing details emerged: teeth marks on the bones, carvings of spirals etched deep into the skulls, and strange oily residue smeared across the wood. Locals whispered that these weren't just ornaments, they were warnings, a way for the Caldwells to mark their territory. But not everyone heeded the signs. In 1979, a young couple from Ohio, eager to explore real Appalachian wilderness, vanished on a weekend camping trip. Their car was found parked at a trailhead, but neither of them returned. The only trace recovered was a torn piece of fabric snagged on barbed wire near Caldwell Hollow, stained with something dark. The search that followed uncovered pits filled with animal bones, but no human remains. At least, none that could be identified. It was around this time that researchers began linking the inbreeding of the Caldwell line with the horrifying mutations reported by those few who claimed to have seen them. Distorted faces, jaws too wide, eyes that seemed to glow in the dark, limbs bent wrong. But others whispered something far worse, that the Caldwells had gone beyond human, that by feeding on their own, they had twisted into something unrecognizable, a family that no longer belonged to the world of men, but to something primal and ancient in the mountains. In the 1990s, as urban explorers began poking into forgotten corners of Appalachia, a few dared to enter Caldwell Hollow with cameras and flashlights. Most came back shaken, their footage blurry and inconclusive. But one tape, smuggled out by a man named Darren Hughes in 1993, showed something unforgettable. The video begins with Darren and two friends exploring an abandoned cabin. The floor is littered with bones, many cracked down the middle, as if marrow had been sucked out. On the wall, blackened handprints smeared the wood, too small to be an adult's, too twisted to be a child's. But the final 30 seconds are what made the tape infamous. As the group whispers about leaving, the camera jerks violently toward the window. Outside, in the pale glow of a flashlight beam, a figure crouches in the tree line. Its skin is pale gray, stretched thin across its ribs, its head tilted far to one side. Then, in a sudden blur, it lunges toward the cabin. The camera cuts off in static. Darren claimed they barely escaped with their lives, and that one of his friends never spoke again after that night. The tape circulated briefly, before disappearing, but the legend remained. The Caldwells, it seemed, weren't content to be forgotten. They wanted to be remembered. And as the years went on, sightings increased. Hikers missing without a trace. Farmers finding livestock torn open and drained. Campers waking in the night to the sound of children laughing just outside their tents. Always followed by silence. Always followed by something missing. By the 2000s, whispers turned to warnings once again. Locals swore that the Caldwells had grown bolder, that their hunger no longer kept them confined to the hollow. Some claimed to see shapes moving along roadsides at night. Others told of being followed for miles through the forest by footsteps that never drew closer, but never faded away. But the most chilling detail came from a bow hunter in 2008. He claimed he shot a deer deep in the woods, only for something else to get to it first. By the time he reached the clearing, the carcass was gone. All that remained was a trail of drag marks leading into Caldwell Hollow and a necklace of teeth dangling from a low branch, swaying in the wind. To this day, no official report acknowledges the Caldwells as real. Authorities dismiss the stories as folklore, campfire tales designed to scare, but the families who live nearest to the hollow know better. They tell their children never to venture too close, never to answer voices calling from the trees, and, above all, never to walk into the valley after dark. Because if the legends are true, the Caldwells are still there, waiting, watching, and always hungry. Even after nearly 2 centuries, Caldwell Hollow refuses to let go of its dark legacy. The valley itself seems alive, as if absorbing the fear of every trespasser, every hunter, every curious wanderer. Locals call it cursed ground, and for good reason. Some of the worst disappearances in Appalachian history trace directly to that hollow. One of the most terrifying modern encounters came in 2015. A documentary crew, drawn to the legend of the Caldwell family, attempted to document the hollow's remains. Cameras, microphones, night vision equipment all packed for a single night of research. They never returned. Weeks later, authorities found one of the crew members' cameras discarded near the edge of the woods. The footage was chilling. It showed the crew entering a clearing where a ring of fire had long ago burned. Around it were skeletal figures, their bones gnawed clean, arranged in grotesque patterns. Some were human, some were not. Shadows moved at impossible speeds between the trees. Then, in the distance, the faint outlines of figures crouched in the mist-tall, thin limbs bent at unnatural angles, faces twisted in perpetual grins. One of the crew members whispered, "They're watching us." And from the darkness, a single shrill scream answered. The camera cut out by the 2020s. The legend had taken on a new form. Hikers and hunters report sightings almost monthly. Figures darting between trees with unnatural agility, glowing eyes staring from deep shadows. And always, the feeling of being hunted. A few brave or foolish souls have brought back photographs, blurred images of pale, emaciated figures crouched over animal carcasses, their fingers unnaturally, long mouths stretched wide and frozen, grotesque smiles. Researchers suggest the Caldwell line may still survive in isolation, that through centuries of inbreeding, ritual, and cannibalism, the family transformed into something beyond human creatures that hunt, feed, and reproduce in the darkness of the Appalachian wilderness. Some locals whisper that children born near the hollow sometimes carry subtle marks, elongated fingers, strange smiles, eyes that reflect light oddly at night, signs that the Caldwell curse is far from over. Even the land itself seems corrupted. Animals born in the hollow come out. Deformed trees twist in impossible ways. The wind carries low guttural whispers, as if the earth itself remembers the horrors committed there. And for those who step too close, there is no safety. The Caldwells are cunning hunters, able to stalk silently through the forest for hours, days, even weeks, before making their presence known. In one of the most horrifying reports, a hunter in 2021 described finding a series of crude altars hidden under overgrown brush. Each contained bones, carefully gnawed, with small carvings etched into their surfaces. Among the remains, he claimed to find tiny bundles of human hair and small teeth. As he investigated, he felt eyes on him, though no figure was in sight. That night, he swore he heard whispers echoing outside his tent, imitating his own voice. When he fled, he found claw marks slashed across the trees near his campsite, and so the legend continues, ever growing, fueled by the isolated valley's silence, the persistent disappearances, and the few eyewitnesses, brave or unlikely, to witness the Caldwell family's ongoing existence. Every scream, every stolen person, every ghastly artifact found in the hollow reinforces the same terrifying conclusion. The Caldwells never truly left. They adapted, survived, and thrived in the shadows. If you think this story is mere folklore, consider the countless missing persons, the unexplained disappearances, the unnatural deformities, and the witnesses who live to tell about eyes that glow in the dark and teeth that gnaw in silence. The truth is far worse than any campfire tale. And now, it's your turn. The mountains are still out there. Caldwell Hollow still waits. And if you ever hear a low, guttural laugh echoing through the Appalachian night, remember, there's some families don't die, some wait, and some hunger. If the story of the Caldwell family left you unsettled, that's exactly the point. They still haunt the mountains today, and their shadow lingers over every trail, every hollow, every whisper of the wind. If you want me to keep unearthing Appalachia's darkest secrets, subscribe, hit the bell, and comment below, which cursed family should we investigate next? But remember, some doors, once opened, can never be closed.